What's going on, everybody? Here today we're going to be doing something a little different, and that is we're going to be taking a look at the top 6 most powerful versions of the LEGO Hulkbuster suit. But wait a minute, most powerful? What do you mean? How are you going to determine this? To which I will say, well, I like to think of it like this. What if they could literally get up and start beating the heck out of each other? That is purely how I'm going to be ranking this, because this is just for fun. And if you agree or disagree, let me know down in the comments below. And just to clarify, I will primarily, mostly, maybe be sticking to official released LEGO Hulkbuster sets, if I feel like it. And to be starting us off, we have Hulkbuster set 0181. Or, as I like to call it, the Disappointment. Heck, I don't even think this guy qualifies as an actual set. It's just really a big figure with some moving parts. And at most, I think he has maybe 6? 2 in the legs, 4 in between both the arms? And honestly, that's what puts him in last place. If he were to get into any kind of fight, he would most likely lose due to the fact that he has very, very limited maneuverability. Because of this, I wasn't even going to put this guy on the list until I remembered he was in a LEGO Marvel video game labeled as a Hulkbuster, so I suppose he does qualify in that case. But aside from that, he would lose to pretty much every other Hulkbuster on this list because he has no way to fight back. Any other person would come along, punch him, he'd fall over, and then wouldn't be able to get back up because he can't bend his legs. Okay, I think I've mocked this guy enough. Let's just move on to our next contestant. And coming in at number 5, we have the Avengers Age of Ultron Hulkbuster set. Now, with this one, it could be considered the first Hulkbuster set, which also means it's kind of the worst Hulkbuster set. You see, the way this one is built, while its arms and legs do have a wider range of motion, they also aren't constructed very well, which leaves him vulnerable to some attacks. For instance, this set has a design flaw in the legs, as they can slip off pretty easily, and not to mention its feet are kind of small, which allows it to tip over pretty easily. And not to mention, this set's pretty light. It doesn't have a lot of pieces to it, which would mean bigger sets could have a pretty easy time knocking it over with just one heavy punch. Also, the chest piece that keeps Iron Man inside, it's kind of just one big piece. So any other Hulkbuster with a longer reach could just pry it down and yank him out. But could this one beat the previous entry? Well, yeah. With its wider range of motion, it could just grab and knock over the previous Hulkbuster. But enough about him. Moving into number 4, we have the War Machine Hulkbuster. Now, I understand its official name is technically the War Machine Buster, but let's face it, it's just a Hulkbuster for War Machine. But what makes this Hulkbuster so much stronger? Well, in the words of Americans, guns! We got lots of guns! We got guns on our back! We got guns on our arms! We got guns inside our guns! We got lots and lots of guns! Do not forget to mention that we have lots of guns! So, yeah, War Machine Hulkbuster has a lot of guns. But besides that, his legs are also constructed better, so it's harder for him to tip over, as well as the fact that he's a bit heavier, and his chest piece is multiple parts, meaning it's harder to pry open. But another downside is that while he does have a decent range of motion, his arms are limited by the fact that his elbows don't have any joints, so they're kind of stuck in that L-like position. But enough about him for now, let's move on to our next contestant. Coming into number 3, we have a fairly recent addition to the Hulkbuster collection. Set 76104. Well now, how is it that this Hulkbuster makes it into the 3rd place versus the War Machine? Well, I have to give the edge to this Hulkbuster because, for one, it's much bigger and much heavier. It's harder to knock down because of how big his feet are, and the center of gravity he has, and his arms do bend, giving him a technical better range of motion than the War Machine Buster. Now, I understand this Hulkbuster doesn't have all the guns, but he can spin 360 degrees, which would allow this Hulkbuster to land some pretty devastating and heavy blows to the War Machine Buster. And considering how the War Machine Buster's arms have limited motion, I don't see him being able to knock this Hulkbuster over. All this one would have to do was land a few good blows, and that would be that. Coming in at number 2, we have the Infinity War Hulkbuster set. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is this one better than the previous entry? Well, the Infinity War Hulkbuster has the advantage of having the best range of motion in its arms thus far, meaning it has an advantage that no other Hulkbuster has. And it would be better in a fight because it has no limitations. Well, in that regard, that is. One weakness would be the height difference, but it's still a pretty big set, and a pretty heavy set, meaning it has a low center of gravity, and combine that with its bigger feet, it's gonna be pretty hard to knock this thing down. I could realistically see this Hulkbuster winning just because of the fact that it has the best maneuverability, and could have the advantage in terms of skill instead of raw power. But enough about him for now, let's move into our final entry. Coming in at number 1, we have the Grand Hulkbuster, set 76105. The Omega Hulkbuster, the Supreme Hulkbuster. It's a big set. And I mean a really big set, which is kind of why I have it in number 1 because of how big it is. It has the most pieces out of any of the previous entries, which would logically mean that this one is by far the heaviest and most dense. Therefore, its punches, whether its arms have a wide range of motion or not, I believe they do, but its punches should be the strongest thus far. And even if they're not, what could any of the Hulkbusters realistically do to stop him? Given the height and weight difference, I highly doubt any of them could knock this one over. Given the difference in how many pieces there are, I doubt they can punch through its defenses. I think you can clearly see why this one belongs at number 1. But enough of that! Let's get into what you've been waiting for this whole time! Let's see them fight!